couple decades now in Burgundy, and they are all numbered clones, like 115, 667, 777, 114. We'll be tasting some of those different, a couple of the different ones today. But again, you can look at the cluster, particularly like 777, you can see is noticeably smaller. The berries are smaller. It's really just a tiny cluster, some variation in the size of the berries, which usually leads to more intense wine when you have smaller berries.
Okay, John.
There's a.
Would you like me to close that?
You look at some of the other clusters, the 23 is a really large cluster, and that one would be considered a loose cluster. You can see how the berries aren't as overlapped and touching each other quite as much. 115 is slightly larger than the 777, but again is a fairly small cluster. The Pommard, looking to the right side of the Pommard cluster, kind of right above the D there, that little portion that juts out from the main cluster would be considered a wing. So that's one thing that is looked at in the cluster morphology. Does it have wings, or again, the size of the berry, looseness of the cluster. So those are some of the things they're looking for with the fruit. And with the selection of the Dijon clones, there's really been a big improvement in the wines in Burgundy. And fortunately for different parts of the world, they've released those clones to be propagated in nurseries around the world. So we can get them here. In the last 10 or 12 years, we've been able to get them here and use them here. And they work very well for our climate here in New York, which is quite similar to Burgundy. The amount of heat units we get during the summer and the rainfall we get during the summer. But because they were so interesting and popular initially, they were planted everywhere, in California, Oregon, Australia. Everyone kind of wanted to jump on this
Sorry.
new bandwagon or new opportunity.
Break.
And it's turned out that they haven't worked as well in the warmer climates like California and Australia. Because one of the things they were selected for was early ripening. And that is a big help for us here in a cooler climate, but in the warmer climates, they almost ripen too early and lose their acidity and don't make wines that are of the quality or intensity that they're looking for in those warmer climates. So that brings us to the California Heritage Selections. And these are another set of clones that have been present and grown in California over the last century. And no one really knows, probably no one really knows what their exact origin was. Most likely they were all brought over from Burgundy initially, but there weren't good records back then of where they came from or what vineyard, or they were kind of just more general Pinot Noir standard kind of cuttings from the general mass of plants over there. But over the years now in California, and more recently, the clones around in California have been looked at and kind of named. studied a little bit more also. And because these clones have grown in California for a long time, they're kind of more adapted to their climate and end up making the better wines, better Pinot Noir wines in California compared to the Dijon clones. So now a lot of the winemakers out there are shifting to taking Dijon plantings out and putting some of these heritage clones from California in. And certainly in new plantings, they're using them as well. So there's a bunch of information on each individual clone there also. And you guys again can look through that at your leisure. And I guess we can go ahead through and taste these different clones now and see what you guys think of them. These are all from our vineyard in California, Vista Verde Vineyard, which is in Hollister, California, in the Central Coast. And it's a large vineyard with probably, I think it's about 400 acres. So they have enough land and potential to plant these different clones and keep them separate as kind of some experimental work they're doing out there. And we were able to bring some of the fruit back here and make the clones separately here also and have a chance to taste them today. So the first one is the Canada. And then to the right of that, there's Swan. And then if you go to the top left, clone A. The middle is clone 667, which is a Dijon clone. And then the one on the top right is a mix of the clones that were fermented together. So
this is the Swan that you have. This one on the top right. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, the top right is actually, yes, is a mix of the clones. It was just mislabeled there.
Is that what's in block 5 here? Is a mix of the clones?
We have a mix of clones, yeah, out there that we pick and ferment together. So that kind of lead us into the next phase of talking about clones. So the clones as a group are going to always kind of behave relative to one, similarly to one, as a group, relative to one another. If you plant them in New York or California or in the Hudson Valley or on Long Island, they would kind of keep their same individual character, but may, as a group, just be, maybe they'd be a little more tannic down on Long Island because it's a sandy soil and it's dry and the tannins are more pronounced in the whole group of the clones. Maybe here they'd be a little more subtle and earthy and a little softer in the finish. But within the group, they would still, maybe 777 would be more intense than 115. And, 115 would be more balanced than the Pomard, that kind of thing. But when you move them to different areas, they're going to be different microclimates. And that's largely due to the soil and the temperatures during the growing season.